In this video, I want to talk about the role of a project manager. To understand the role of a project manager, I want to start by looking at it through the lens of the project lifecycle and the project process that we need to follow. And to help me, I'm going to use the framework of my 8-step project process. Step 1 is to answer the question, what do you want? It's about creating a project definition. So the first role of a project manager is to work with stakeholders, to work with sponsors, suppliers, users, everyone who's involved in the project, to define the goal of the project, its objectives, and the scope of what you're going to be doing, and also what you're not going to be doing. There's a lot more, of course, to project definition, but creating that is the first component of the role of the project manager. Step 2 is to answer the question, does it stack up? This is about creating a business case or a project proposal or an investment appraisal. So the role of the project manager here is to look critically at the benefits and the costs of the project and to weigh them up against one another and to document that. And you need to do it in a way that is fully accountable and matches the procedures and processes and standards of the organization within which you're working. Consequently, you may need to understand a fair amount about financial evaluation methodologies. It's also important to note that in some organizations, your role is to put together a business case, a proposal that is a piece of advocacy that makes the case for the project you're proposing. But in other organizations, your role is to evaluate your project against a number of suitable alternatives so that the decision makers can weigh up those different alternatives and make a decision based on a much more objective business case document. Step 3 is to answer the question, who cares? And this is all about stakeholder engagement. So your role is to create a stakeholder engagement management process and plan. And it's to spearhead engagement with stakeholders, making sure that your project team as a whole and the individuals work with stakeholders in an appropriate and respectful manner. And of course, this also involves creating communications plans and following those plans. Step 4 is about answering the question, how will we get what we want? So this is all about planning. So the first role of a project manager that falls out of this is to plan the project, to get to grips with the timescales, the resources, the tasks, everything you need to make sure that you've got a robust, comprehensive project plan. And then the second thing that goes along with this is to start thinking about contingency plans as well. Of course, you'll also need at this stage to think about evaluating and selecting and implementing the tools you will need to support not only the planning process, but monitoring against your plan and reporting. Finally, I'd suggest that another part of a project manager's role here is to start thinking about quality. What are the right quality standards, and how are we going to make sure that we adhere to those quality standards, and how do we report that properly through the governance procedures of our project? The 5th step is to answer the question, who will help? And this is about managing and leading the team that will help you to deliver your project. So your roles here start with identifying the team members that you'll need, the roles that you'll need to fulfill, and the best people who are available to fulfill them. And then your next part of your role is about allocating responsibilities, providing guidance and support and coaching to enable your team members to thrive. This is the part of your role that is really about project leadership. It's about leading people. And I'd also say that it's part of your role here to coordinate and facilitate team meetings, to maintain team morale, and to make sure that your team members communicate effectively with one another. Step 6 is to answer the question, what if it goes wrong? This is about risk management. So here your responsibility is to identify risks, to understand and quantify their implications, and to start to put in place appropriate strategies and plans to manage those risks down. You'll be looking at contingency planning, you'll be looking at risk reduction, you'll be looking at transfer of risks, and all of the other strategies that you'll need. Step 7 is to answer the question, how's it going? This is the delivery part of your project responsibility. It's about monitoring and controlling what's going on. And of course, the first responsibility under this is to manage the day-to-day running of your project, to oversee what people are doing and to evaluate the quality and the effectiveness of their work, to make sure that the deliverables they're producing meet the standards that you set, and to make sure they are able to comply with the timelines and the budget constraints that you need to put people under. And that reminds me that budget management is one of your responsibilities. So too is regular reporting. Good project reporting is partly about communication, but it's also about accountability, transparency, and governance. And finally, thinking about project governance, you'll need to attend project board meetings and meet frequently with your sponsor and with other senior stakeholders. And finally, step 8 is to answer the question, how did it go? And this is about closing your project down in a structured and orderly way. So your responsibilities are to follow your own project closure checklist to make sure everything has been done to get your project properly closed. And I think your second responsibility here is to make sure you learn the lessons. Lessons learned reviews are great for organizations. They often produce good and worthy documentation, but many organizations don't do much with it. I think your principal responsibility is to your team members, for you and each of your colleagues to learn from your experience and take that forward, to each have those lessons enhance and develop your own careers. Outside of those 8 steps, I think there are a couple of other lenses we need to use to look at your responsibility as a project manager. And the first one is a strategic lens. As project manager, you need to liaise with other managers within your organization. You need to liaise with other project managers to make sure that the interactions between your project and theirs work effectively, that there are no inappropriate overlaps or gaps, and to make sure that your calls on resources and their calls on resources are compatible, particularly in terms of timing. And you also need to liaise with managers in the operational parts of your organisation where your project touches upon their operation, because they will need to know in good time and liaise with you about the timing so that you do not adversely affect critical operations. The final lens that I'd adopt is one that recognises that as a project manager, you're not just a manager of the project, you are a manager of the people on the project. So this is the kind of people management, people leadership responsibility. And there are a number of elements to it. You need to be able to identify and apply and disseminate good practices for your team. You need to facilitate good team communication between individual members. What you don't want is for you to be the hub of all communication, so that if you're not there, communication could break down. You have a responsibility to develop your team so that your team works well as a cohesive unit. Another responsibility is motivating individuals and making sure that team morale is at its optimum. And if you sense team morale or individual motivations are flagging, to intervene, to deal with the problem, and to bring people back to effective working motivation. And finally, I think you have a responsibility to develop the people under your leadership, to support them, to guide them, to develop their capabilities, their professional skills, and their careers. So you'll be deploying things like training, like facilitating conversations, coaching, and mentoring. So as a project manager, you have a lot of responsibilities. It's a big job. And I've kind of rushed my way through it, summarizing as I go. I hope I haven't missed anything, but if you think I have, please do comment below so that other people can debate what else needs to go into the project manager's responsibility set. It's a big job and I hope I've done it justice. So if you've enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, please do subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell if you want an email every time I drop a new video on YouTube. In the meantime, I look forward to seeing you in the next one.